So Nick Thomas came over today to test out some cameras. He brought his Arri Alexa Mini. Thanks for coming, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I borrowed a C200 from the Camera Store. Go follow the Camera Store TV on YouTube. And I just kind of want to play with some cinema cameras. Mostly I want to see what this camera can really do. And just kind of like test some footage, see what it's like as you step up towards the real cinema world. The reason this collaboration got started is recently we've done some client videos and I just wasn't really happy with the image quality that was coming out of the A7 III. We were shooting an S-Log and there can be such terrible banding in it. I don't think the client is going to notice, but I notice. And anytime it needs to be viewed somewhere that isn't compressed, and whether or not anybody else notices these problems, they are real problems and I want to do better. So I wanted to see what a real cinema camera could do. So we pulled a few models together from the Nobles management, got some Quasar Science RGB tubes, and pumped the room full of fog machine. Also, Nick was on the podcast a while ago and we talked about this some more. So for more details about all these same things, you can go to StalmanPodcast.com. If you're not already familiar with the idea of like marginal return on investment, as the price of things go up and you get more towards the very high end, the amount of return on your investment actually goes down pretty quickly. So if you buy the cheapest DSLR or mirrorless out there, you're getting most of the image quality available in 2019. So if you're going to spend $100,000 on a camera, and I mean, this is when an Alexa is kind of rigged out, just the body is cheaper, but you need better lenses and you need all this support to go around it. Once you spent 100 grand on the camera, you are basically just guaranteeing that there are no further improvements to be made. The camera isn't a question of the quality. Now it's all down to your craft. Image quality is taken care of. It's funny because as I'm watching Nick shoot with this thing, I keep thinking of different YouTuber videos where they bought red cameras, like they saved up for their big dream camera and sold it because it turned out to be like too big to work with or too hard to work with. But still looking at it, like I want it. I want a big camera. Buying an Alexa is like a super moonshot goal for me. It's not something I really expect to happen. So I was more curious to see what the C200 would really do, see how closely they matched up. And we only took this one comparison shot, but you can see at a glance, they're pretty close. I mean, these are completely different lenses. These are not matched that well, but you can see with just a little bit of grading, they can get pretty similar to each other. It doesn't take much. If you want to see way more detailed analysis of how this works, go check out Armando's video where and actually on the same day we were shooting this, he was shooting his Alexa versus C200 comparison. And his was like a real comparison. This is not, but make sure you go check out his video. It's really interesting. And as I imagined myself someday buying an Alexa, I thought more and more about how important it is to be aware of the commercial environment that you're working in and make sure that you have clients that are going to appreciate an Alexa and are going to see the difference and pay you for it. Because if you can't put that camera to work, it's not worth it. And that goes all the way down, not just Alexas, like if your next upgrade is a 5D Mark IV or an EOS R, or maybe you want a Hasselblad, just make sure that the people that are hiring you are also interested in it. Part of it's taking for granted that you're gonna have a team with you. You're gonna have other people to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And do you ever end up shooting this camera by yourself?
I do. It's very rare, and I find it is cumbersome. It is not the easiest thing to just kind of like load up your car with a couple cases and run out there. I mean, you can strip it back a bit for sure and make it just, camera, lens, battery, and off you go. So that, handful of times, but it definitely, as you get into the cinema packages and bigger things, you do need a team to kind of support you along the way.
It's not the point. Yeah. The point is to have people all chipping in to make a bigger product.
Yeah, it's a team effort, right? So it's a team sport, and you can do so much greater things with bigger teams. So it lends itself to that a little bit too, in terms of as you start to get to those bigger packages.
By just owning the camera, you're not going to jump into a whole new bracket of cinematography. And to hear some detailed conversation about two guys that went through this, that bought Reds and sold them because it didn't work for them, make sure to listen to the Stalman podcast, episode 48 and 49. Caleb Wojcik and Matt Diavella, they both went through this themselves, and I'm trying not to fall in the same trap.
I would say, I've definitely made mistakes. I mean, I bought a Red Epic W. To be honest, would my clients notice the difference?
So looking at something like a C200, it not only offers a lot of the image quality that the Alexa has, but it's much easier to work with. I mean, I don't have to work with a big crew. Usually it's just me and my wife working together, but if I had an Alexa, I would need more people. It's very challenging to do it by yourself. This would even apply if you're moving from, say, a micro four thirds camera to a full frame. You gotta get bigger lenses, you're gonna carry something around heavy. Like, just be aware of the trade-offs and that the most expensive thing is not necessarily the best. The great thing is there are so many camera companies building amazing products right now. I just happen to like what Canon's doing in the cinema world. Why would you choose Alexa over Red? I mean, obviously both of them shoot some of the best footage in the world. What made you decide?
Yeah, it was interesting at the time because when we were looking at cameras, I was debating about a Red or like a Dragon or Weapon at the time, and I think it came down to the quality of the image and the look, the color science at the end of the day. It just, I think Red, it just has like a sharper, for better lack of a word, maybe a little more of a sci-fi VFX kind of world look, and it just seems like the Alexa had the most like filmic, look in terms of like the highlight roll off and the dynamic range and skin tones and everything. So at this point I have definitely no regrets on the choice that I made at the time. But it's and it also, when you shoot anamorphically, like the sensor is a true good like 4:3 size sensor, so you are using a lot more of the sensor. Where Red, depending on what you're shooting and resolutions and things like that, you're using a different part of the sensor. So for me, it's also, it's the quality of the pixels and not the amount of them.
This was also my first time working with anamorphic lenses, and wow, they look so good. There is a very distinct feeling and look to them.
I think, at the end of the day, it is like almost the lenses that can help define the look, because every camera now on the higher end side shoots at such like a great resolution with great log footage that a good colorist can probably try and match that stuff. And it almost, the look starts to really become from like the lenses that you use or filters and things that actually give character to the image. And that's why, there's even been a bit of a trend of people like detuning lenses and decoding them just to give them more character.
Nick also had a Pro Mist filter on, as well as some crystals that are mounted to the sides of the camera. This was an experiment. We were just kind of screwing around on this day and we wanted to see what it would look like, but it's kind of a cool effect. Anyway, anamorphic is great and beautiful, but it is prohibitively expensive. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars per lens, possibly, just to get into that market. So, I mean, most of us are going to be working with spherical. That's what I'm shooting on now. But I really wish there was a smaller, cheaper way to do it. After reviewing all this footage, I am not surprised how impressed I am with the Alexa footage, especially right out of the camera. Like, it just looks good immediately, even before you grade it. And when you do go to grade it, it's very simple. There is definitely a myth in my mind about color science. Basically, as long as your camera is capturing enough data, you are able to get the colors wherever you want. But we don't all have the expertise or the time to do that. So I want a camera that's gonna bring me there right away. I can't afford the Alexa, at least not today. All right, that was a great shoot. Thanks, Nick. Are you tired from holding that all day?
Not too bad. I've gone longer, but I'm feeling it a little bit. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again for coming.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
So I think the Canon C200 is much more likely to be in my future.